And good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. How are you? This is Michael Connor, the host of Voices for Excellence. And I am glad to have these two guests. Once I asked both of them to appear on my podcast, immediately they say yes. And Dr. Balderas always got to start with ladies first. And I would like to introduce Miss Beverly Hope. Now, Beverly Hope, if you want to talk about, one of the leaders, and we're not talking about education, but we're talking about big pharma. When we talk about big Fortune 500 company organizations, Bev was really the only voice that represented women in those rooms. And we know how those rooms used to be. But Bev is an equity warrior at heart right now. She is the vice president for Active Pure, and she's helping I like to call her my deputy superintendent within the initiative. So Bev, your equity stance, and I've learned so much from you with regards to Fortune 500 companies and the intricacies and the complexities within it. But our conversations that we have, Bev, it emulates, some of the conundrums that we face in education when we talk about structures and systems. So, Miss Beverly Hope, it is my honor to have you here.
It is my total honor to be here with you and Dr. Balderas. I couldn't be more thrilled to be doing this with you today. It's awesome.
Thank you, Bev. It's great to have you. And when we talk about disruption, right, because I'm trying to create this intersection of education and big pharma Fortune 500 companies, and how does the similarities with regards to dismantling equities or inequities in that. But Dr. Gustavo Balderas does not need an introduction, right? National Superintendent of the Year, I think, 2 times already, Dr. Balderas, twice, I believe, National Superintendent of the Year. Currently, right now, is the president of the board for ALAS and is the superintendent of Beaverton schools. I ain't gonna lie, right? Gus, and I said ain't, all right, so there's traditional language, right? I am not going to lie. I'm a big fan of Dr. Balderas and the work that he does, especially around Black and Brown students, and just pushing that equity needle that needs to be pushed in education. So this is absolutely an honor to have Dr. Gustavo Balderas here within the show for Voices for Excellence. So Gus, great to have you, my friend, hermano.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Nice to see you and Bev as well. And again, I was National Superintendent of the Year in 2020, just once AASA Superintendent of the Year back in 2020. I was also Oregon State Superintendent of the Year back in around that time frame. So thank you for being here. And it's always a pleasure to be around you. And Bev, great to see you again.
Likewise, great to see you guys.
Thanks. I tell you, well, you know what? I'll tell you this, Gus. I think any educator would just love to win State Superintendent of the Year once. But you did it once at the state level and at the national level. You know what? In my opinion, that's 1, 2 mic drop. So let's just jump right into the conversation, right? And I want to start with you, Dr. Balderas. We have seen, right, historical regressions within literacy and numeracy achievement across the board, specifically nationally, when the most recent data was released, I believe about 2 weeks ago, the NAEP data that I'm talking about. But I think what's more alarming is the gap exacerbation between the highest performing students based off the NAEP data. They only went down 3 percentage points. But what we saw was in that first quartile, it was a 13 percentage point drop. Right? So very significant. Even with our highest kids, we're seeing a gap exacerbation with our highest kids and our lowest performing kids. But again, those quartiles, those domains, those metrics that we see, right? They're insidious. We know that. But from a pragmatic, accelerated academic recovery strategy, Gus, what would you do, right? Or where would I start? Because I have to be an adaptive leader, right? The problems that we're seeing, the phenomena that we're seeing is very abstract. But where do I start, Gus, especially if I'm an equity warrior like yourself?
I think we need to look at data, Mike, and I think we need to reframe the metrics. Let me explain that a bit. I think we can't look at data that we had in 2018. We need to look at current data because, again, the pandemic really impacted kids furthest from educational justice more, like you just stated, than others. So how do we really look and reset data to make sure that we're looking at the right frames. And then it's continuous improvement. It goes back to the things that we know how to do well as educators. We use data to help inform decision making, but also, Mike, we need to align at K-12. So what does that look like in the educational system? So that we have, that's making sure we meet the needs of kids, K-12. So we have the right interventions and the right extensions for some kids. But again, using that metric, so reframe the metrics. We need to look at metrics of now, not of yesterday. And also, I think we need to look at making sure that we take care of the mental health of kids and staff. Just had a parent meeting this morning with a group of educators. Is we need to make sure that we ensure that we take care of the mental wellness, because that's what I'm seeing as well. Kids are dysregulated. Staff are dysregulated. So how do we regulate? How do we make sure we take care of our own so that we have the opportunity to learn more effectively? But going back to funding, budgets are moral documents. Whatever you fund, you believe in. Budgets are moral documents. So making sure that we put the money where the need is. So we need to make sure, because equity is not equality. We all know that. Is making sure that we're making the need where there's the most impact. So again, a few things again, making sure you have, you reframe, use the right metrics, and then you have the right system, K-12, and that you're absolutely funding what you believe in. So where is the need? Fund the need.
Funding the need, mental health, critical around dysregulation, right? Not just at the student level, but the staff level as well. But what kept resonating with me, right, is reframing the metrics and how that looks now as we move forward. Those are all critical points. Now, just to underscore that, Ms. Hope, I'm going to bring this in, right? When we talk about reframing metrics, when we talk about, the dysregulation of staff and students, but moreover, right, funding where the need is. Looking at this, right, and specifically in your area of expertise, Bev, the discussion around indoor air quality. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, when I was a superintendent, especially during COVID, I was purely, focused on this learning context of what is going to be our academic recovery process and how do we accelerate closing unfinished learning gaps. Then we just went into this process around ensuring our buildings are healthy. So, me, and Gus knows, I started going intense research about this. So, but indoor air quality has not, appeared on our radar until basically the CDC provided during that time when Gus was a superintendent, I was a superintendent, regarding air filtration. Now, this has become a hot topic in education. Bev, in a simplistic form, what does this look like? And what should not just leaders, but school boards, parents, families, how do you pay attention to indoor air quality? Because I can tell you one thing, I just want to give a quick story and then have you jump into this, Bev, and you know this. The reason why I'm doing this initiative is because, one, my mother has chronic asthma, right? And as I started to unpack this, it was basically because of she was going in moldy schools, and then where she was living at within her community, the air quality was compromised too. So it was an external and internal issue or quandary that we were seeing, or that my mother engaged in, as now she suffers with chronic asthma. So, but Bev, in a really simplistic form, what should we do about air quality, and how does it impact education and students?
Thank you so much for that question. I'm coming at all the challenges within the school districts from a fresh perspective. So I really like to step back and just sort of frame it in the big picture. I mean, the schools across our nation are facing significant challenges. This is from the aging infrastructure, from overcrowding, from the pressure on resources of teachers, to the rapid spread of communicable diseases such as flu, which is going to continue. We know all of this threatens student health, teacher health, attendance, and academic performance. So at the big picture level, at the essential level, everyone needs to get on this page that indoor air quality impacts human potential. The decades of scientific research have made the case closed, shut, tight. The data proves that indoor air quality affects our ability to do our best work and be our best selves. At the school district level, leaders must pay attention to the role of indoor air quality in closing equity and achievement gaps. Leaders must place indoor air quality management as a core pillar to close equity and achievement gaps. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And Bev, I just want to ask a follow-up question, right? And I was so dubious to this topic, but Bev, why did it take education so long to start talking about this important issue?
You know, you have to think about it a little bit like an iceberg. The data has been there for decades. The pandemic put the spotlight on the top of the iceberg. That is the issue of the transmission of communicable diseases. We know that transmission is indoors, and you need to take care of the indoor air quality to mitigate the risk of transmission. But the deeper insight that is so critical is all of the data that relates to the impact on our human bodies, on our brain, and our ability to perform based on the quality of the air we breathe. It affects our cognition. For students, it affects their ability to take tests well. It affects moods. It affects stress. The data, the evidence, the peer-reviewed studies are out there in dozens and dozens and hundreds. It's just collecting that and making that clear. So it's underneath that iceberg. That's where the information is, where we can really unlock this finally.
Yeah, and Bev, I appreciate that, because I'm hearing parallelization between your response as well as Dr. Balderas. This is a large macro equity issue, whether it be, when we talk about reframing metrics to close unfinished learning gaps, even to this, I like to call this new evolution in education that we're starting to talk about with indoor air quality. It ties into this equity issue that we face in education. So I want to go to Dr. Balderas and kind of bringing this back, right, to the education piece of, I consider you, Gus, a czar in change management processes. And I look to you when we talk about rapid school improvement or even strategic performance management. You are that leader across this country that undergirds this with an equity lens. So as we move into the AC stage of education, Gus, the first typical year since 2018, 2019, which is this year, 2022, 2023, what advice would you give leaders on how to parallel or even interface your operations strategy as well as your academic strategy for long-term wins?
Yeah, I think you really need to define your framework. So you need to have a plan and stick to the plan. It sounds really simple, right? But you need to make sure you have a strong framework using an equity lens and ensuring that we are meeting the needs of all kids. Because again, sometimes in schools, in school districts, those with the most affluent sometimes have the most influence, right? And we need to make sure that we as educators, as school leaders, are the ones that really guide the system to ensure that there is equality, that there's equitable access for our kids and also our staff. Because again, it's like back in the old days, Mike, I've been doing this for a while. Back in the old days, we used to have our title teachers who were our Title I teachers. They were our newbies. Who are Title I principals. They were our newbies as well. We did it wrong a long time ago. We fixed it. We can't go back again. So again, do what's right for our schools and families. But again, I think what I would say is to the leaders is make sure you have a solid framework that you can stick to and have policy behind it to back you up from our school boards. Because once you have policy, you define that framework with that policy and make it, again, something that you can actually implement. That provides a cover that we need to be able to do the work for all kids. So I hate to say that right now because we're in a different time right now. We're in a different time. We have a lot of rhetoric nationally about this. So making sure that we have the right policies in place and the right plans in place based on research. Like Bev mentioned earlier, it needs to be research based on best practices and have the right framework and then stick to it for a while. You can't be moving back and forth. And also what I call weed the garden, get rid of things that aren't working and stick to the things that are.
No, Gus, I mean, you know what, when you say that, right, two words come to mind: alignment and coherence, right? You have a plan, make sure it's grounded in research, that framework, and right, policy adoption, which will actually change behaviors and mindsets in accordance to that plan. And you're right, get rid of the access, right? We already have so much in education, but what's not aligned to that plan, why should it be a priority to the district or to the leaders? You're absolutely right. That's why, Gus, I think like you are, and this is a subjective statement, but an objective statement. You are one of the best at that. I haven't seen anybody done it better than you across this country. So absolutely, I hope people that are listening to this, you have your pen, you have your computer, you have your iPad. Take important notes down, because these are important factors that I wish I had when I was a superintendent or when I was starting my journey as a superintendent. So, Ms. Hope, I call you the deputy superintendent of the Voice for Excellence Health Education Initiative. Now, to our participants out there, everybody knows, right? I align everything to, all right, who's going to be, the voice for the initiative. How are we going to align the metrics? What is the core framework to underscore what Dr. Balderas was talking about, which is going to be my disruptive excellence framework. But I'm considering you the project manager, right? Deputy superintendent in the education world, right? So, but in 1 minute, high level overview, can you give just the brief summary points of the Voices for Excellence Health Education Initiative, and how this initiative, through advancing indoor air quality, how will it democratize? I want to use that word, to emphasize on that word, democratize excellence and equity in their respective districts.
Yes, I'd like to build on our conversation and the points that you and Dr. Balderas have already made. So we know that given how much students spend indoors, which is significant, it's about 90% of their time, indoor air quality is not only impacting their ability to perform like in school that day, but it's impacting their potential to become their best selves and thrive in careers and thrive in society. So let's focus that healthy learning environments are essential toward unlocking the aspirations and the potential of all students across our nation and closing equity gaps that have worsened over the pandemic. So this landmark initiative will close equity and achievement gaps with a focus on healthy learning environments, which will minimize absenteeism, improve cognitive performance, and achievement outcomes.
Wow, Bev, the way I don't even want to speak anymore about the initiative. I'll hand it over to the deputy and let her speak about it, right? But Bev, you're absolutely right, and I can tell you this, Bev. Thank you to you and your team for jumping on with this initiative, being the operator, because to our participants out there, yes, Active Pure went through a rigorous process. Interview process, discussions back and forth, meeting with their statisticians, researchers, data scientists. And that's when I said, yes, Active Pure will be my partner for this initiative, because ultimately I want to generate quick wins, right? For our superintendents, for our districts, of how we can close equity gaps, excellence gaps, in this strategic and sophisticated way, using emergent science as well as technology, and that's grounded on this big data and analytics. Bev, your team is helping me geek out all the time, and I really, really appreciate that. So,
Honor
but
and our
Gus, no, go ahead, Bev. I'm sorry.
It's our honor and our privilege.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So, Gus, it was great to see our friends, Alex and Jesus, right? participate in the White House Forum about indoor air quality. And two of our friends, Dr. Marrero is the superintendent of Denver Public Schools in Denver, Colorado, and Dr. Herrera is the superintendent of Clark County Public Schools in Nevada. So it was great to see our friends on there. You know, we're like, yeah, go Alex, yeah, Jesus, you made it to the White House, yeah, brothers. But it was really important what they were talking about, right? But from that webinar that we participated in, and Alex and Jesus being at the White House, sharing their knowledge and strategies with regards to indoor air quality, I want to ask you, Gus, right? How can you outline strategies, right? You always say you need to fund the need. I love when you say that, right? How can you outline strategies for strategic budgeting with segmenting indoor air quality into your academic recovery process?
Absolutely. So it has to be part of the plan, Mike, right? So it has to be
Yeah.
part of, so in terms of our facilities needs, has to be part of our academic plan, because as Bev mentioned earlier, and you've said it as well, is it's all aligned. It's not split. It's one system. Our facilities are as critical as our academics, because again, if we can't keep our kids safe, whether it's the infrastructure of our buildings and compared to our curriculum, it's the same. It's really the same thing. So as school leaders, how do you ensure that you keep up on your maintenance? And that's the one thing that typically goes aside as a school superintendent.
Yep.
It's a deferred maintenance. You talk to any school superintendent and ask them about the deferred maintenance number. It is huge. It is huge. So, because again, it's more invisible than what's happening in the classroom. So I think we need to make that a priority. I think what the pandemic taught us is to make that a priority from now on. For example, we run our exchanges more often in our buildings from now on. We used to run them during a school day, just during work hours. Now we run them 12-hour shifts. In high schools, we run them longer because of activities. Our clean air exchanges went up from 5% clean air to 20% clean air. We learn about filters. We learn from MERV 8s to MERV 13s, right? I mean, right? So we all know about air filters now. That's school superintendents, right? So it's getting better. But I think what the pandemic taught us is it educated superintendents to some things that maybe we weren't accustomed to be informed by our maintenance staff. And now we need to make it that a plan as part of the academic plan of how we move it forward. Whether it's clean water, lead in the water, to MERV filters, it needs to be part of the plan.
Absolutely. And Gus, when you say that, right, I'm kind of living vicariously through you and all the superintendents out there, because when we talk about inclusion of the plan, I think I would have made an addendum within my strategic operating plan and adjust goal 2 and add a new strategy that's focused on indoor air quality. That would have been fascinating to do. And I guess I'm living vicariously through all of you of doing that through this initiative. But Miss Beverly Hope, you had me read a book. You gave me homework.
Yes.
I gave you some homework and you gave me some homework, Miss Hope. So, and I tell you, Bev, it really deepened and strengthened my capacity with regards to the importance of indoor air quality as well as economic development. But and I recommend this book, and I can tell you, I don't take any credit for pulling this book off my education shelf. This was Bev Hope. It's called The Age of Sustainable Development by Jeffrey Sachs. And it was a really compelling book where he talked about, in order for our global economy to reach this level of sustainable development, right? 3 major aspects have to happen. 1, economic development. 2, social inclusion, and 3 is environmental sustainability, right? And Bev, I consider you an environmental specialist, right? Obviously, you have very, very broad and dense intellectual property that is diverse, right? And that's what makes you so special. But why is it important for leaders and districts to make strategic investments with indoor air quality, underscoring economic development, social inclusion, and environmental sustainability, of what Jeffrey Sachs poses in his book, The Age of Sustainable Development?
Well, I'm really thrilled that you took my idea to read Dr. Sachs's book. Dr. Jeffrey Sachs is a renowned, notable economist and leader in developing policies that ensure sustainability at a macro level worldwide. He's been working with countries and governments to get them to a stable path to achieve their social goals and economic goals and health goals since the 80s. And his approach and his policies have been proven successful. So his book is definitely worth a read. But what is important and relevant here is that we need to apply sustainability policies and thinking at the micro level of the school district, all right? Investing in improving indoor air quality is now a moral mandate. Just to pick up what Dr. Balderas was just saying, budgets are moral documents. We must put that into the goals for achieving school district outcomes related to equity, health, and achievement. So let's relate it to the climate change. School districts are micro communities. They have microclimates from dry to wet to cold to hot and changing throughout the year. Dr. Balderas mentioned the HVACs. HVAC and lighting represent over 70% of a school district's budget. So districts must build long-term sustainable indoor air quality management strategies and plans that fit the unique needs and are sustainable from a budget standpoint. There is no one size that fits all because school districts vary based on their external environment and their internal environment. They are going to need customized solutions. They're going to need long-term solutions. They're going to need solutions that optimize both the indoor air quality and the energy cost. That's what's key. The good news is that now with technology, all of this is possible. It's not difficult. It's easy. It just has to be part of the plan, a long-term plan, and managed based on metrics.
I can tell you this to our participants, everybody needs a Bev Hope in their district, right? And she pushes thinking. She enlists and grounds rigor with everything. That's why she wanted to create this level setting mindset with regards to having me read The Age of Sustainable Development. And Bev, that is just so, wow, just a great answer, great. And, you know, I hope that now, you know, as we're collectively learning, and I'm still learning in learning about indoor air quality and what you keep, you know, you give me white papers, research studies, the book, you know, by Dr. Sach. We need to have that type of intentional capacity building with our leaders, right? When we talk about the disruptive excellence framework, closing the preparation gap, I can say this, I wasn't prepared when I was a superintendent to be able to have in-depth discussions with you, Bev, when I was a superintendent. Now, we need to bring that type of education and capacity building to our superintendents, as well as district leaders, boards around this important issue, which I'm gonna go back to Dr. Sachs' work. This is social inclusion, right? Around his big theme. Talked about one, equity being, you know, at the forefront with this, but more on the lines is education and health is a part of this economic development and environmental sustainability. So I'm gonna throw this question, right? I did this intentional with the questions, the first 3 questions to highlight both of your expertise. Now, this is gonna be questions where both of you can just be able to jump in. And this is where we're talking about the real issue, equity, right? So in each of your definitions, I love Gus's definition of equity, heard it so many times, but I want our participants to be able to hear this again, right? And Bev, given your definition of equity, I heard it so many times in private conversations and meetings as well, but the voices need to hear what this definition is. So if you can, Gus and Bev, define equity and how it is displayed in your individual leadership signature.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so my leadership signature was sort of crafted and formed throughout a career in the private sector. And we were driving for revenue, profit, growth, long-term return on investment. And I learned early on to achieve those high goals of significant double-digit growth and return on investment. It required a focus on innovation and differentiated strategies based on the customer's needs. But it required unlocking the potential of individuals in their individual jobs, but also teams, and also then businesses and corporations. So I've learned that equity is essentially unlocking potential of individuals, teams, units, organizations, and society. You can think of the body, and you can just apply the model of the human body. Equity is health. Now think of it broadly. Equity is not just health for a human's chance to thrive. It's what we need for organizations and society to thrive.
Wow. Wow. Gus, that's hard to follow, but both of you individuals are hard to follow. So Gus, please.
So my definition of equities is intentionality and access, opportunity, and inclusion. And so that everyone in the school system, parents, teachers, students, broader patrons, feel a sense of belonging in the system, because all too often in the past, school systems have been one-way conduits of information. We just go out and tell you we're going to have a parent conference. We have this going on. We give you the calendar, and it's really just one way. We don't ask for two-way feedback. I think until we ask for that two-way feedback and that two-way conduit of information sharing, that's when people feel that they belong. My last district, I had 136 languages. Here I have 104. So until I get people to understand in their native language in terms of, and feel a sense that they belong in every one of my 54 schools, I haven't met the mark yet. And my craft, and this was all formed by my upbringing. I come from a migrant family from Mexico that were farm workers. So my craft was gleaned from my personal experiences growing up through the system, where I saw a lot of biases being impacted, because again, I'm 55 years old, so I've been around the system for a bit in terms of just what I've seen and what I've read. And I think my impact is to try and change that narrative and the systems to ensure that we have the opportunity to meet the needs of everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. And each of you, right? Gus and Bev, both of you, right? You've dismantled barriers of inequities, whether it be in education, Gus. Gus, it was really moving. Gus and I participated at the IALAS conference, right? And this just, Gus, your respect level for me just went up 100%. Where Gus acknowledged, right? Gus acknowledged at our dinner the staff, right? And when he acknowledged the staff, Gus got emotional because it means something to him. And what that definition, or what I saw, that's equity right there, right? You definitely acknowledge all. You acknowledge all. You include all. And Gus, I didn't tell you this personally, but it moved me. And I actually got a tear too when you got choked up there, because I'm like, wow, yes. We got to recognize everyone. And thank you for doing that, Gus. I didn't get a chance to tell you that, but I really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you, Michael.
So for the next question, right? We know both of you just dismantled barriers, inequities. Bev, you shatter glasses in pharma and Fortune 500 companies, whether it be gender equity, racial equity, the varying aspects of equity that we strive for as educators, as private sector vice presidents. What strategies would you offer leaders who boldly want to change the status quo, whether it be in education or their respective industry?
Yeah, I have a mantra, and that is a change requires a relentless, passionate focus on serving the customer. All the change management initiatives that I led in big corporations were based on building a customer-centric strategy and culture throughout every aspect of the organization. That's what it took to change and grow these companies and deliver, better and better and better results. And I think that this kind of thinking is exactly what schools need. In the case of schools, the customers are the students. It requires a endless curiosity and pursuit to meet the needs of individual students across the entire journey, the entire customer student journey, from pre-K all the way to launching them to post-high school. Understanding students at an individual level versus a group level is a massive mind shift change that is needed. That is old news in the private sector. All right. We have all kinds of communication and services that are provided to each individual based on how they are interacting with the organization, how they communicate, how they request for information, how they search on their websites, et cetera. It's been done for the last 15, 20 years. Now we need the schools to catch up with the thinking that it's not one big group that you're putting through grade by grade by grade. Your focus is on the individual student as the customer that matters more than anything, relentlessly, continuously. If we can get the schools to think that way, the ability to unlock potential of our students, to me, is just, it's going to be transformative for our schools and for our nation.
Well stated, Bev. Well stated. Transformative, right? That's the type of bold leadership we need. Gus, please underscore that.
It's funny, I haven't talked to Bev about this, but really it's that focus, that clear focus on kids. And I work with aspiring superintendents and young superintendents on this, because there's going to be distractions in the field. There's going to be all these distractions. You got to put away the distractions to stay focused on kids and achievement. How to do that, because I call COVID a necessary distraction. We had to deal with it. It was a distraction away from the focus. So, and how many times do we get hit every day with unnecessary distraction, that noise? So we need to filter that. So we need to filter that noise, those unnecessary distractions or necessary distractions to do that work if you have to deal with them, but keep the focus on kids. Keep the focus in that laser-like, always looking at data to see how you're moving the needle and what you need to do to focus on kids. I think that's where we sometimes run afoul, because we get distracted. We start turning corners and go this way, go that way, because it's easy to do. But I think, like Bev said, that relentless pursuit for excellence for every kid.
I love how both of you said the relentless focus on kids, right? On kids, on students. The most I remember when I was a superintendent, I always say that we have to be customer centric, right, Bev? Focused on the MICs. I always say the MICs are our most important customers. Who are our most important customers? Students and families. And we always continue that. And you heard that here. And, as Dr. Balderas, as he was saying, the noise as a distraction. I took a class, Gus and Bev, at MIT called Algorithmic Business Thinking. And the third step within developing an APT or an ABT organization is focus on the signals and eliminate the noise, right? Data can be very episodic. I mean, this was used in a data term, but when you think about it from an education leadership lens, you want to focus on the signals, as Gus and Bev were talking about, and eliminate the noise, as the noise I like to call is exception processing. But as we close this podcast, I wish I could have 5 hours with both of you, but this is going to be one of the hardest questions, because both of you have like this immense capacity with a lot of knowledge, but you're only allowed to use 3 words. Gus, that's hard for superintendents. And Bev, I know you personally, that's going to be very hard for you. But in 3 words, as we end this podcast, what do you want the audience to ground their equity journey with in order to ensure high levels of success? 3 words.
It's simple. Equity through IAQ.
Oh, no, you cheated, Bev. You cheated, Bev. Gus, I guess we can have a little leeway beyond the 3 words. Go ahead, Gus.
I always say, my life, the 3 words would be paid forward, because and the reason I use those words is, we all are here because of people that have mentored us and got us to our seat. In the 5 districts I've been able to be the superintendent in, I've always been the first Latino, and we're in 2022. So in 2022, there should be no more first. And we need to make sure that we strengthen the bench of leaders, especially leaders that are reflective of our student body that's ever changing. So pay it forward. Pay it forward.
Pay it forward. And Gus, I want to just, before we end, yes, we need to stop having the first, right? I was the first superintendent, African-American superintendent in my district, in my previous district. And I'm seeing a lot of first, and we see people celebrating the first. I think we should stop celebrating being the first, because it should be a norm, right? We should have many Dr. Balderases out there across the country, or many Dr. Connors across the country, or even from a gender equity stance, many Beverly Hopes out there leading, changing, and grounding our work, paving it forward for kids. So thank you, Dr. Balderas. Thank you, Ms. Hope. And this concludes our 3rd episode of Voices for Excellence. And also, I want to thank our guests for this month, because we were celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month as well. So to our leaders that participated in our celebration with Hispanic Heritage Month, as well as having Gus and Bev here today, everybody have a great, great day. Keep moving, be better than yesterday. And as always, keep pushing for kids. Onward and upward. Have a great day.